Hi, I'm Martin, and in this video I will show you how to configure and how to use Atavism Advanced AI system. So here we have few predefined behavior profiles. We will use three for this tutorial. So the first one is defend caravan behavior. The second one is defensive, and the third one is melee, ranged and fleeing. So let's open the first one. And we have a lot of data here. So let me show you quickly how the default form will look like. So if we will create a new profile, we have name, we have section called mob behavior, and when we will have more than one, it will be auto-numbered. Next section is behavior conditions and mob ability. So based on these behavior conditions, this behavior will be chosen, and mob ability, if we will add a new group, based on this will create ability group, and we can create as many as we want. And we also have ability conditions here. So based on these conditions, on these ability conditions, in this case ability conditions group 1, this ability will be chosen. So first, Atavism will select which behavior the server will use, and it will use it based on conditions. And secondly, it will choose which ability will be used based on ability conditions group. And the important element is to mention that behavior conditions can have groups as well as ability conditions groups. And you can also have many groups, and each condition group can have many conditions. So for example, we can have condition group that will check our statistic, for example health. It will check if our stat is 50% on our mob or on our target, let's say for our mob. And in this case it will check if our statistic is less or more, in this case less than 50 points and 50% here. And this is only for statistics that are type of vitality, in this case health, because we won't have information about percentage for other stats like strength, for example, because we won't have information what is the maximum value of this strength, so we won't be able to calculate percentage. Within this behavior conditions group, we can define another condition, like for example distance. So if distance is less or more 10 meters, let's say more than 10 meters, then switch to this behavior, for example offensive, and equip, for example, a bow. So if our target, like in this case our player, will attack our mob, and we are a ranger and we are attacking our mob from a distance, then if the distance will be higher than 10 meters, and because between conditions we have AND operator, so all of these conditions within condition group will have to be met. So if we will add the third one, like effect with tag on the mob or on the target, exists, so it's present. So all of these conditions will have to be met to switch to this behavior. And if we have more than one condition group, then between condition groups we have OR operator. So either this condition group will be true and Atavism server will switch this, will use this behavior number 1, or for example this number of targets, maybe 2, ally or enemies. So if it's ticked, it will use ally, check allies, and if it's not, then it will use check enemies. So we want to find, in this case, allies, let's say, and less or more. So if we have less than 2 allies within an area, let's maybe remove this. And in this case it will check if these 3 behavior conditions are true. If yes, then this group will be true, and Atavism server will use mob behavior 1. Or if number of targets, so the second condition group and the second condition, in this case behavior condition 1 in the second group, will be true. So if there are less or fewer than 2 allies around, then mob will use this mob behavior 1. So it will use behavior, and then we are defining abilities. And abilities are also having conditions. It's of course optional, so there can be conditions or not, so it's up to you. And we are defining what is the range that the mob should keep. For example, if we want to use more like a close combat mob, then we should use lower value, and this value is percentage of our ability that will be selected. So for example, if we will have ability that will have attack range like between 0 to 10 meters, then if we will select this to, let's say, 10% to 20%, then 10% from 10 meters it's 1 meter. So 1 meter is the minimum value and the maximum value is 2 meters. But if the mob will be able to use this ability, he will use it no matter if the distance will match or not, because the ability is possible to use in this offensive behavior type. But we will come back to this soon. And we will describe each of the behavior types. And then we are defining conditions as well. Here we have a bit more condition types, because in behavior condition we have conditions like distance, statistic, effect, like a tag of the effect that exists on the target or on the caster, and number of targets like allies or enemies around. So we have 4 condition types for behavior, but for ability we have a bit more conditions. So we have event, so we can define event like parry, dodge, miss, damage, heal, critical, stun, and sleep. So these conditions are on the caster, while combat state and death state are only on the target. And we have stat and effect and number of players. So these three are similar to the ones that we had for behavior conditions. And these conditions are in use to select which ability group should be used. So for example, we can have a mob that will attack ranged only, but based on this condition, for example, if the mob will get an effect or debuff, it will start healing himself, or he can start using totally different ability. And we are defining ability and defining priority. Of course, we can define as many abilities as we want. An Atavism server will randomize them based on the priority. And based on these priorities, Atavism server will randomize one of them. So if we will set this to, for example, 100, 10, and 1, let's say magic arrow, let's say stun arrow, maybe let's set 2, so, and 1. So the magic arrow will be chosen 100 times more often than the stun arrow, because the value is 100 times lower. So it's basically adding all these values, like 100 and in this case 1, so it will be 101, and randomizing one value from this 101 range. And if the ability will be on cooldown, it won't be part of this calculation. And now let's move through the types of behaviors. So we have the first one, offensive. So this will use abilities even if the range of this ability group, if this distance is not met. So for example, ability like we mentioned, we have, let's say we have ability that has 10 meters range, and we will set this, let's say it's a ranged ability, so let's say 70% to 90%. So the mob is trying to reach between 7 and 9 meters range from the target, from our player, from our attacker. But even if the mob will be at distance 3 meters, because our player is really fast and it's following the mob and trying to kill him, then the mob, because it's in the offensive behavior type, he will still use the ability because the ability is between 0 to 10 meters. So the target of our mob is within this range. The next behavior is defensive. And the only difference is that this ability that we mentioned, so in our case, if the mob won't reach distance between 7 to 9 meters from the player, he won't use this ability. So he will run as long as the defined distance is not reached. So in offensive behavior, the mob will use abilities every time he can, but he will try to reach the distance. And in defensive mode, the mob will use abilities only in situation where only when the distance will be reached. Then we have defend. And defend is a mode where our mob will defend mob with tag. So we can define tags for our mobs. The next one is fleeing behavior, so flee. And in this case we have few more options. We can define what is the flee point. So we have define it as opposite direction. So it will try to run from the attacker. We have defined position, and we have an option to add more points, and Atavism will randomize one of them. we will also show this example, and to group of friendly mobs. So it will try to find the nearest friendly mobs group, and we will try to reach this group. And during behavior, we have a bit more options here because we have during fleeing, we don't have abilities, strictly abilities and abilities group as many as we want, but instead we have abilities that we can use when fleeing is started, and also we have conditions. Then we have abilities that we can use when we are during fleeing, and then we have abilities that we can use like here when, so not mob behavior but here, when the mob will reach the fleeing point. So for example, we can have a mob that when he will switch to the fleeing behavior, he will start screaming for help, and when he will reach the point, then he will use an ability that will spawn some additional mobs that will try to kill the mob attackers. And the last behavior type that we can set is heal, and there is also a tag that we can select, so it's similar to the defender option. So we are defining a tag, and in this behavior this mob with this behavior will check status of health of the mob with this tag and will try to heal him. So now let's switch back to our behaviors and let's see how these behaviors can be assigned to our mobs. So in the mobs section, so here in the menu we have mobs section. Let's say we will select one of our predefined configuration. So let's say orc male light, and here we have melee, ranged and fleeing profile selected. And that's basically it. That's all. And we also have for our caravan, so we have human female 01 caravan. We have defined mob tag like caravan because we had to select this for our behavior. And this caravan mob shouldn't have any profile because we don't want this caravan, in our case, we don't want to engage the enemy. So the caravan should only travel and not attack. And to not attack, we have to keep this field empty. So let's switch back to our mob behavior profile. And here we have 3 profiles that we will analyze. So let's start from our caravan. So first we have behavior number 1 that is offensive. And one more thing that I forgot to mention is that Atavism is analyzing these behaviors and these conditions one after another. So if the first condition that will meet the conditions will be chosen. So if we have, for example, condition or behavior with empty conditions, it's obvious that this behavior will be chosen for sure because it doesn't have any conditions. So if we would have this on the first option, then it would be always chosen. So we have this on the second, and now it's on the first place. So we can drag and drop these elements, and we should have element with these conditions defined, like the most fine-grained conditions at the top and without any conditions at the bottom. So it's starting from top to bottom. And in this case we have condition. So in this case we have the first behavior with offensive type. It's in milliseconds, so it's 1000 millisecond ability interval. It's how often the mob will check if this check which ability to use. So it's for optimization purpose mostly, to not check this too often. Then we have ignore distance, chase distance. So our mob, when we are spawning it, it has chase distance. It's how far the mob will chase his attacker. So in this case our player or another mob. In most cases we want to have this unticked, but in case of Caravan our chase distance is from the place when our mob were aggroed. So we usually want to have this ticked on so our mob could follow the attacker as far as he can. Then we have selected weapon type. In this case we selected that our defender should use bow. So offensive type, use all abilities at will, no matter how far you are. If this attacker is within our ability range, this mob will use this ability. He will equip a bow. And then we have few conditions. So we just set a few examples. Like if the distance is 10 meters, in this case it's not ticked, so it's more. So it's more than 10 meters, the distance to our attacker, to our player. And if effect with effect tag free on the mob is not present, then select this behavior number 1. And if this behavior number 1 will be chosen, keep the distance between 70 to 90% of this ability, of the ability range. Abilities don't have conditions here, and we will use ability, in this case magic arrow, with priority 1. If there is one ability, it doesn't matter what is the priority, of course. So this is our first behavior. The second behavior is defend. So defend mob with tag Caravan. Also check abilities every 1 second. Ignore chase distance. Equip a sword in this case. Here we had equip a bow, so it will be more obvious. No behavior conditions, because we want to enter this behavior every time. And then we have ability range between 10 to 40 and use critical charge, which is close combat melee ability type, and ability is also without any conditions. The third one is, in this case we want to switch this back to the second. Yes, so first is offensive, second one should be heal, and the third one is defend, because we want this without conditions, as I said, at the very bottom, in this case on the position, on the third position. We can have more than 3, of course, and we can add as many as we want. So let's analyze the second one. It's heal, so it's also 1 second. Ignore chase distance and heal Caravan, so it will check health of this Caravan, of this mob with tag Caravan. And behavior condition is if the effect with effect tag free on himself is present. So it will check if the mob has this effect. So here we are checking if the effect does not exist. And in the second behavior, we are checking if the effect exists. And if so, use ability with range 0 to 100% because we want to heal the Caravan. And it will use health potion friendly targets, so it will use some kind of health potion on the Caravan. Also without any conditions for abilities, it will use this only ability. And the third behavior, we already analyzed this one, so it will defend, it will be triggered by default. So basically our goal is to present that we have a Caravan, we have a defender, and when we will attack this Caravan, the mob will aggro, because this behavior will trigger, so no conditions. Mob will start using mob ability with distance 10 to 40% ability range. In this case, this ability range has, let's check it, 2 meters. So it's pretty close. So it will be between 0.2 meters to 0.4 meters around. It will try to reach this distance, but he will use ability within the whole 2 meters range, and he will use critical charge. Then if the distance will be higher than 10 meters, for example, we will try to escape, and we will increase the distance between ourselves and the defender. The mob won't have this effect with tag free on himself, then he will switch his behavior to this first one. It will be offensive. He will switch his weapon to bow, so he will unequip a sword and equip a bow, and start using magic arrow. He will try to reach distance 70 to 90%. When we will approach and attack Caravan, the mob will aggro on us. Start using equip a sword. Start using this sword with critical charge, and when we will try to escape, he will switch to bow and start following us and attacking with bow. But when we will cast an effect on the mob, because we have present effect with tag free on the mob as a condition, if we will cast this effect on the mob, then the mob should switch his behavior to this and start heal Caravan with ability health potion. So let's see it in action. So as you can see, we have a Caravan, so this mob has tag Caravan, and this one is following it because it has defend condition, defend type, defend behavior type. So let's attack our Caravan. Now we can see the defender is aggroing at us, so let's move back. Let's increase the distance, so the mob switched to a bow, but if we will cast an effect on the mob, now he is following our Caravan, and we will see that the Caravan is healed. So we are attacking our Caravan, and we can see that the mob is, our defender is healing our Caravan. And now switch back to our editor. So let's analyze our defensive option, defensive profile. So in this case the mob won't attack us if the distance defined for the ability, like 90 to 100%, won't be met. So if the mob won't reach this distance, he won't use abilities like Magic Arrow. In this case the mob will equip a bow. In this mode it will ignore chase distance as well. And here we have condition group with one condition, like effect type, effect with tag 3 on the target. So it will check if we have this effect on ourselves, because it's present, ticked, and then he will use Magic Arrow. Next mob behavior is offensive. It will equip a staff. Also will check if this condition is true, so in this case we have also an effect, but in this case it will check if it's on the mob, because it's present on self, and it will use ability within the whole range. It won't have to move at all, and it will use health potion for orc, so it will use healing potion for himself. And the last one we have behavior 3. We have offensive, ignore chase distance, it will equip a sword without any conditions. So this one without any conditions is at the very bottom, and it will use ability within 0 to 10% range. It will try to reach this distance, and it will use critical charge ability. So let's see it in action. And here we have this mob with this behavior. So he is reaching us, attacking with melee, with critical charge, because we defined it so. So the last behavior is critical charge without conditions. So he is attacking us. And then, if we will cast an effect on the mob, he will switch to staff and start healing. And if we will cast the effect on ourselves, then he will switch weapon to bow and start using Magic Arrow. So let's see. Let's deal some damage. And now let's cast on ourselves. So we have the effect. And the mob is start using ranged, equip the bow. And if we will follow him, he won't use abilities. So he has to reach the distance, because it was set as defensive behavior type. And when the effect is over, he will switch back to sword weapon and switch the whole behavior and start attacking us. Now let's check if the mob will switch behavior to the staff and start using healing ability. So effect on the mob. Mob has a staff, and he start using healing ability and healing himself. So it seems to work fine. Now let's check our third behavior. So melee, ranged and fleeing. So here the first one is fleeing. So the first one is always the last one that we would want to use, because it has the most conditions. So in this case we have flee, ignore chase distance because we want to reach this point. We have defined position, coordinates in the scene, and we have condition group with such conditions like if the health will be below less than 30% on himself, then he will start using ability I need help. When he will start fleeing, then during fleeing he will also use the same ability. It's just for example, it can be different ability. And when he will reach the point, he will use ability spawn orcs. So this is the first behavior. The second one is offensive with bow. When his health will be less than 70% on himself, then he will switch to bow weapon and use abilities like magic arrow and stun arrow, when preferred is stun arrow. And he will try to reach 70 to 90%. So he will try to keep the distance between us and him. And the third behavior is also offensive. So he will equip a sword in this case without any conditions. So he will start using this as soon as we will enter the aggro. And he will try to reach the distance 30 to 40%. And he will use critical charge ability. He should start using, he should equip a sword and start using critical charge when we will enter his aggro range. Then he should try to switch to offensive behavior when his health will drop below 70%, and he should equip a bow and start using bow abilities. And then he should start fleeing when his health will drop below 30%, start calling for help, and spawn mobs when he will reach the location. So let's see it in action. So we have mob here. He start using melee ability critical charge, which is fine. Let's drop his health. Now he is using bow ability. He ran away because he wants to reach 90 to 100% range, as I believe. What was our ranged? Here is fleeing, and here is bow ability, 70 to 90%. Now let's drop his health again, because we set it to 30%. So if his health is below 30%, he's screaming for help and reaching a point and spawning a mob, or rather mobs. And now we are doomed. Let's kill these mobs. We shouldn't let him reach this point again, because he would again try to spawn mobs, use ability and spawn mobs, because when he would reach this point, the ability to spawn mobs has also an effect to heal himself, so he could switch back behavior to, for example, ranged or melee. The last thing I would like to show you is how defending option works exactly. So we will try to attack this. We will use another player. And now I will attack Caravan. So as you can see, now the defender is attacking me instead. So as you can see, this new advanced AI system in Atavism for mobs is pretty powerful, and you can use it for boss fights or really advanced behaviors for mobs, like mobs can switch behaviors, can behave totally different based on various conditions like distance, like number of targets, like statistics. So that's all for this part. I hope you like it. We spent quite a lot of time to make it as flexible as possible and to cover as many use cases as we could. So thanks for watching and bye bye.